Everybody, my guest this week on the podcast. We're excited to talk to this guy, talk all kinds of football with him. Cole Thompson, you can check him out on the morning drive with Dan and Cole. That is with Dan Matthews. They're in Houston on Sports Talk 790. Also, all things SEC with SEC Unfiltered. Also, too, Texans Wire covering all things Houston Texans. He is the managing editor over there. And Cole, I appreciate you coming on.
Brother, I'm excited to talk about, I think, Auburn football, maybe SEC football, maybe the NFL, maybe a little bit of hockey, because let's just be real. If your juices aren't flowing after what you just witnessed with Jack Hughes scoring a golden goal, you're not an American. You just simply aren't patriotic enough to feel the fire of the bald eagle coursing down on the Canadian goose and making it clear that this is one of the greatest sports to ever watch live. We were talking about it before we got on the air. I'm excited to be on with you, dude. Thanks for having me.
Actually, absolutely. All day Monday, Freebird was just in my head all day long. I rewatched. I think the first period and a half last night before I went to bed, just because I'm still on that high
I'm
for the
telling you,
rest
dude,
of the
I will
day.
be I will be watching that game on and off probably for the next 15 years. And you know what? I'm okay with it, because I'll also tell you this right now, dude. For all the hockey aficionados out there that think that they are very alluded to the game, wait till 2030. Canada's going to be locked and loaded, and they're going to have your number. I promise you. They appreciate the win of 2026, because I don't know if we're winning it in 2030.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I still have bad memories. I was glad they got rid of that from 2010. I still remember Sidney Crosby hitting the shot in overtime. I probably posted something that I didn't like Canada on social media then. I'm pretty sure I did back in some way younger days. But yeah, appreciate you coming on. Of course, you guys just back in November started up with the radio show in the mornings. Do you ever get used to being up that early?
Okay, yes and no. So it's a really fun question. So the beauty about what I did before I got working in morning drive was, for 3 years I was an overnight host. So my time period was, I would get up at midnight, drive into the studio at 1 in the morning, and then I would do a show from 2 to 6 every single day. So I was a reverse night owl. So when I'm getting up now at like 4 a.m., I'm so used to already be going into my third hour of radio that day. So like that was where my brain was forever, to where I basically had to retrain myself of, no, don't get up at midnight, but also make sure that you do not oversleep that first alarm. The rule of thumb that I've always had is, if you have that first alarm, you can doze off a little bit here and there, but you better be able to have that alarm close by for the second one. You're not allowed to fall asleep for the third one. Like, you better have the two. When the two play, you're in, you're out the door. Like, you gotta be that way. So I got very lucky with it. It is a challenge, I think, for some people as they get used to it. You kind of have to go about your lifestyle a little bit differently right now, where, instead of having dinner, let's say like 7:30, you're having dinner at 6 o'clock, because if you got to be in bed by 8. But the problem is that there are days that you maybe have to wake up earlier than usual, because instead of going to, because usually you're waiting for a game to end and it could end at, say, like 10:45, rather than being on that 4.5 hours of sleep, you'd rather wake up at, like, say, an extra 30 minutes early, get the recap of the game, figure out what went right, what went wrong. There's gameplay that's really important, highlights, revenue, all that stuff that you can go ahead and have in your back pocket. It's always big. So, your lifestyle is a little bit different when you do mornings, because if you don't know how to be able to make it work. But you either have to be really good at napping, or you got to be able to get your 6 hours in some capacity. And I suck at napping. So that's kind of like the way that I've been able to make it work.
Yeah, what is sports talk radio like when you do the overnight? You mentioned you go on there at 2 o'clock in the morning. Uh, what is that like? Do you get callers? All that kind of other stuff.
You can. What was really interesting about it was a radio show that would broadcast in 52 markets across the country. So they weren't big markets either. Like, you weren't going out from Houston to, say, Los Angeles, or you weren't going out to New York City, but you would be in Albany, or you would be in, not Oklahoma City, but you'd be in Tulsa, or you wouldn't be in St. Louis, but you'd be in Branson. And so the thing is that you kind of had 6 months to test out what were things that worked and what didn't. And it's a little bit different, because there's always going to be a fan base of, like, that one group that they want to call in a lot. So I got a lot of phone calls from Tulsa. Like, Tulsa was all in on Oklahoma football. They want to talk about Thunder. I had a lot of people that would call in from Renton, Washington, and they'd always want to talk about, they were adding in an NHL team at the time, or they want to talk Mariners baseball. So you kind of just were kind of playing toward the audience. And like at some point, you would start to turn toward what made people want to call on in. And there would be days where, we'd get like 15 to 16 phone calls overnight of his people that were truck drivers trying to hear about their team, or people that were, doing the late night shift, they'd call on in. And then there would be times to where you'd get no phone calls for 4 hours and you had to figure out a way to entertain yourself. So the way that I would go about my rundown and the way I'd go about my schedule of what I wanted to talk about was 95% of the time, I want to entertain myself. Because most of the time when you're senile and basically losing your mind at 3:45 in the morning, you have to be engaged. Because if you're not engaged, the listener's not going to be engaged. So as long as I was able to think that I was enjoying the content, like if I was driving down the road at 3 in the morning, trying to get home, and I'd be enjoying listening to this, I knew I did my job right. And most of the time, that was kind of the beauty of the banter, is I would be enjoying it. Therefore, because of I was enjoying it, the audience would enjoy it.
And obviously you're kind of in both sides of the media, or the audio side of things, then doing video with YouTube, like doing radio in the morning, and then also the podcasting and YouTube as well.
Yeah.
What have you seen as kind of like the big difference between doing those two? 'Cause I know there's a lot more freedom with podcasting and YouTube versus radio, because you don't have to hit that break 13, 15 minutes in.
Yeah.
It's kind of, you can go longer with segments, interviews, all that stuff. But what are some other big differences you've seen with the two mediums?
There's 5 major ones. The first one is there's no FCC regulations. You could say whatever the hell you want on YouTube. I can get fined for saying one naughty word, and I don't hit the dump button fast enough, $25,000. I could lose my job. I could have, I could have the company in trouble. I'm liable for what's on replay. Again, you don't have that on YouTube. Now, much like when it comes to, radio, they can clip whatever they want, replay it, and that's up to you if you want to handle what the banter is, but you're not restricted that way. Number 2, and probably the most important thing, and there's been a lot of people that have talked about this before, but when it comes to YouTube, they have to find you. Like if you're in Houston, people in Houston know who I am. People in Houston know, oh, well, he also talks college football. Oh, well, he also talks hockey. Like this is what Cole does, and he'll throw it out there and we'll listen to him, and we don't always agree with it, but we'll talk about that. On YouTube, they have to find you. And also when they have to find you, they have to find you and they have to be entertained by you. So when it comes to Houston, if you're only interested in listening to Houston sports, you have 5 options to listen to. 3 radio stations and 2 incredible podcasts by former radio show hosts that have done a good job of being able to build that repertoire into their own background. When it comes to college football, you have to be entertaining enough to say, why listen to this guy when I can listen to you? I think that that's really important, and it makes you be a little bit more direct on what are your subjects that you want to talk about. It makes you kind of study a little bit more of what the revenue say. I mean, what the numbers are saying when you look back at YouTube distribution of, hey, this subject really hit. Your attention time was for 9 minutes of a 15-minute video. People were more willing to subscribe to this video because of you were doing a good job talking about this subject. And so it allows you to kind of play into that bit. I think the third thing is YouTube, you get to be more free. You already talked about not having, the hard outs, all the timing, sponsorships. You got to go find the sponsors. When you work for a radio station, there's a little bit of give and take. You can reach out to your sales team and say, these are the companies that I would really like to work with. But they can do their part and say, we can do what we can. When it comes to YouTube, you have to find your own sponsors, and people have to find you that way. So that's a way to go ahead and throw that all on in. You don't have to worry about timing rhythms when it comes to those things. Number 4, you can go for as long as you want, but you better be entertaining. Like I know when I'm on air for SEC Unfiltered or College Football Addiction with TJ Pittenger and Tom Hannafin, I have to be on for 90 minutes. I like it has to be 100%. You got to give it your all for those 90 minutes. You got to be entertaining. You got to be witty. You got to be funny. You got to be able to go ahead and bring in knowledge and facts, and you can't mess up. I only have to be on for 12 minutes when I'm on radio. So I can go a little bit more aggressive. I can go a little bit more vibrant. I can go a little bit more enthusiastic on certain takes because if I got a 5-minute bumper period to reassess, go get a water, go to the bathroom, reset what's going to be my next take. And maybe, the next bit, I don't have to do that. You always have to be on when you're on YouTube, because of the second you're boring and the second that people don't want to be around you, they'll turn the channel to somebody else. They'll stop the video and they'll say, thanks, no thanks, I don't want to watch this again. So you always have to give it 150%. And the fifth and probably the most important thing is, on radio, you're looking at a dialogue of what your numbers say for that day. With YouTube, you're looking to see what those numbers are saying consistently. And so the thing that I always hear from people is, I want to get into YouTube. I want to get into podcasting. I want to get into all these things. I'm like, okay, you do understand that at the very end, your views are going to be crap. The few people that do watch you are probably going to say, this is fine, but it's not really that great. You're going to get a lot of hate comments, and you're going to have to do it at a high-end rate. And then when I tell them all that, they're like, oh, well, I really don't want to do that if it's not going to go ahead and hit immediately. And the beauty of what I always tell people is, you are only going to fail if you go in with that mindset. If you automatically go in to say, I have to work really hard to go get these views, you're only going to see yourself struggle. And I think that that's what kind of separates really good YouTube shows, is they constantly are pushing themselves to barriers. They're constantly pushing themselves ahead, and they're saying, this isn't working. We're throwing that out. We're not going to do it next time. Here's what is working. We're going to continue to hit with that. And in radio, you do that too, but you're constantly going up against a meter that can change at any given second. Where YouTube, you got to continue to see the growth. You may end up having a video that gets 15,000 views, and your next video gets 156. But you can't change your repertoire or your persona because of, one video did good, therefore I've made it. Rather, I've had some videos go for over 250,000 views, and then I've seen another one go for like 1.2. I'm not changing who I am in that personality because of it's only going to continue to help me grow.
I had that happen to me a few years ago. I was doing previews for this one. We still were the 14 college football playoff. It was the Ohio State Georgia game I was previewing. Buddy Jay Stevens from Locked On Buckeyes came on.
Yep.
That thing blew up. That video was on. The numbers were big, and then the Georgia side was too as well. So you think, okay, I'm going somewhere, and then the next one you get humbled. So yeah, no, 100%. The talk ball, of course, I'm right over to Auburn wire and stuff like that. I think I remember you did jumped on with us on our prediction when Auburn played A&M, but Auburn is an interesting spot, I think, as a program. It's kind of like, who are we? What are we? First off, the whole Hugh Freeze thing. I thought going in that was going to work, because what he's done offensively, he's a good recruiter. Obviously, it didn't. Hugh Freeze, the offense coordinator, was the problem. He did a good job getting talent there, but it just did not work on the field. What was your thought on kind of Hugh Freeze going when he got the job at Auburn, and kind of how it all went down?
Hugh Freeze was my pick to get the job when they fired Gus Malzahn when he was at Liberty. And then they went and they hired Brian Harsin. And I thought, okay, probably at this point, Freeze is good at Liberty. He's going to coach there for a while. He'll win a bunch of games, and he'll turn the program around where Conference USA champions year in and year out. And then Harsin gets fired almost immediately. They hated it from the jump. And you knew it was a bad hire when, and I say this kindly because of I think that he is a phenomenal podcaster. I do. And so this is not a shot at him whatsoever because he's so in the know. But when Zach Blackerby goes from Locked On Auburn, Brian Harsin, who the hell is that? You knew it was a bad hire because that's what, because when a guy like Zach Blackerby, who is so in the know about a place like Auburn, has no idea what the hell that hire is, you knew it was bad. So then he gets fired. And then I'm like, Hugh Freeze's offense is really good for the G5 level. It's really smart and innovative for teams that are getting these young coaches that really don't know what they're doing. But you throw it in the SEC, he's going to be exposed that he's running the same stuff that he was running back in 2015. And so he gets hired. I'm thinking, okay, let's see how much changes. Well, he doesn't do anything with the quarterback position. He brings in Peyton Thorne. Peyton Thorne doesn't have an entire spring. And you see that, it's still an offense that has eerily similarities to what you were running when you had Bo Wallace and Chad Kelly out in Ole Miss. And the offense has changed a lot in the last 8 years. Okay, so then you go to the next offseason. And then you see the recruits that he's bringing on in, and you see that the names that you're able to target. And he does a good job of going from defensive players on that side of the ball to offensive players of high level recruits. saying, okay, I see the vision, I see the image. And then he says the comment about quarterback play. Why spend $1 million on a quarterback? Because quarterback is the only thing that's going to work for your offense. And last year it didn't. So Peyton Thorne comes on in. You have the constant carousel of other guys doing it. And then you spend money the next offseason. And you know as well as I do, Phillip, the people at Auburn are a good, fine people. And they really do care about their football program. They are very prideful about making sure the program turns around. You got 3 years to do it. And then their patience runs thin. And especially when you spend all the millions of dollars that Auburn has spent, you have to change up something to make this offense work. You go bring in Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold was probably not the first phone call that you really wanted, but it was Hugh Freeze's first phone call. And you go bring in some names that you like on the offensive line, and you don't really upgrade when it comes to play calling. And a lot of people were saying, Hugh, you do a good job recruiting. You do a good job of being a CEO, but your offense is being stuck in 2017. And I'm like, okay, if your offense is stuck in 2017 and it's 2025 and I'm studying the tape, I'm going to find every single thing that beat you in 2017 and just run that out there because it's going to stop you. And it did. And lo and behold, that's what happened. Immediately, you went back to remedial offensive play. You didn't see growth in a star wide receiver in Cam Coleman. You never really saw the offensive line get that much better. You really, really struggled at times running the football without having a guy like you had last season. Why am I blanking on his name?
Are you talking Jarquez?
Jarquez Hunter. You really kind of took a step back when it came to the overall execution. Jackson Arnold was mightily the problem. It was clear as day that he was in over his head, and you were fired because of it. And I think that there were a lot of things that if Hugh did differently from an offensive standpoint, like use some of the money that was given to him to hire a play caller, he may still be the head coach. He really might, because if he did all the little things that you like, but at the end of the day, you can do everything that you need to bring in all the bits and pieces that you like. If you don't execute, you're not going to be around much longer. And that's why he was fired. It wasn't because if he didn't have the talent. It wasn't because if he pissed somebody off with having a bad phone call. It wasn't because if he was doing illegal things, because everyone does illegal things, but not the level he was at Ole Miss. It was because of they gave you everything to work and you still weren't able to even back the car out of the driveway without bumping into a bunch of trash cans and running into the front wall. That's what happened.
Yeah, he did. Then, of course, they do fire him after the Kentucky game. And then everybody, I think, a lot of people, and look, and people watching video, I can see I'm wearing a short hat. I go to school there. I'm also a big Florida supporter. So John Summerall was the name. And I think a lot of people thought, okay, he's coming to Auburn. Then the Florida thing, all that, he goes to Florida. Alex Golesh, I'll admit, I was a little, at first I said, okay, interesting. Then you see everybody that's leaving. And then you're like, okay, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So, okay, this doesn't look good. But now you bring in Byron Brown. You bring in Bryson Washington from Baylor. You've got Jeremiah Cox coming back. I mean, pretty much have the South Florida offense coming in. Where are you at on what Alex Golesh has done so far?
For me, it's really interesting because I thought the best hire of the offseason was John Summerall. It could have been at Auburn, and I would have said it was the best hire of the offseason. Like, I have a lot of people like saying, well, you've been so kind to Florida in the past. That's why you picked it to be number one. He could have gone to Minnesota. I still would have said it was the best hire of the offseason. That's how much I love John Summerall. And I don't think that's a slide at all whatsoever at what you got in Alex Golesh. It's just it's personal preference. He's done a good job of bringing in players that will fit his culture to set a standard for next year. Now, I see a lot of Auburn fans in my comments all the time saying, well, you don't give Byron Brown enough respect. I think Byron Brown has the ceiling of a top 3 quarterback in the SEC next year. He's the only player returning in college football with 3,000 passing yards, 1,000 rushing yards. Only guy. But you also have to realize you're not playing at the G5 level where you get one matchup against a Florida and then you get a Navy and a Memphis and a Tulane on the schedule. You have big boy games and you don't have same talent that you're going to be going up against like you did every single Saturday. So let's give and wait. But I do think that you bring in a guy that understands the offense, understands what Alex Golesh wants. You bring in some wide receivers that you really, really like that are very accustomed to running the style of play that worked for him at Tennessee, worked for him down in Tampa, helped him beat Billy Napier in the swamp. You bring in the center who is a potential all SEC center the second that he touches down. You land Bryson Washington, who Auburn fans probably remember because of the Baylor game back in Waco last year. He was very bottled up, but he was the Big 12 leading rusher in 2024. Now he's a part of this offense, and he's paired alongside with Jeremiah Cobb. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about what the future of Auburn looks like from the get-go. Now, I'm not ready to go ahead and say that they could be a dark horse and go 9-3 and make the college football playoff, or I won't even say that they're 5-7 fighting for a bowl game. But I see a scenario where all the things that you want to believe can turn the tide at Auburn will be able to be established this year. And then in 2027, that's where you really strike. You start to understand that there are pieces of this offense that work exceedingly well that are going to be enticing to kids in the transfer portal. You bring in a quarterback that you believe is going to be a difference maker for your offense. You bring in somebody who you think can be stable on the offensive line. And you spend that money properly to where the vision's in place. We know how to win with this team. Now we just got to find the Jimmies and the Joes that can get us to that next stage.
Yeah, and maybe some Auburn fans won't like me saying this, but I also think winning 7 or 8 games would be huge just to get the streak off of them, the 5 consecutive losing seasons, because it's something that hadn't been done at Auburn since the 50s. So if he could do that, too, that'd be big. Alabama. A lot of people here in the state, obviously, after the Indiana game, were wanting Kalen DeBoer gone. A lot of Alabama fans are not happy with him, which tough job anyways. You're 2 years in replacing the legend, the GOAT, Nick Saban. They got out physical by some teams, especially Indiana. They got beat by Indiana how they used to beat everybody. Ty Simpson, they couldn't run the ball this past year. Offensive line struggles. Ty Simpson, he seemed beat up. Going into 2026 season, do you think Kalen DeBoer goes into the year on the hot seat?
It's such a weird thing. So I'm an Alabama grad, and I keep it quiet because of I don't want anybody to think, oh, well, he's an Alabama grad, so that way he talks negatively. My trick is I say I hate all 16 teams in the SEC equally. And then when someone's like, even my team, I say, especially your team. And then when I talk about college football at a national level, I say I hate all 136 teams equally. Same quota. I hate your team the most. The thing that I have with Alabama is I don't know many true Alabama fans, like the diehards, the ones who are fully invested into Alabama football and have been for the last 20 plus years. And really, I'd go as far to say before Nick Saban arrived, that want Kalen DeBoer fired. Because I think that a certain group of people understood that Kalen DeBoer was going to be put into a position that was almost going to be insurmountable to accomplish. If you didn't win a national championship within your first 3 years, you were never going to be as good as Saban. Therefore, we deserve to fire you. I think that that's a more media-driven thing. Because if it knows it gets clicks, it knows a lot of people are going to get to talking points. People like Paul Feinbaum have to be able to do a show for 4 hours a day, and it needs to go ahead and drive in the views, which is why you go ahead and have him say on the hot seat. There's a level of, I think, uncertainty when it comes to Kalen DeBoer moving forward, because you had a guy that went from leading Washington to back-to-back 11-plus win campaigns and a national championship title appearance to a team that made the SEC championship in year 2, went to the college football playoff, but has some ugly matchups. I mean, the Florida State game is almost as inexcusable as the Vanderbilt game. The Vanderbilt game, for me, is beyond inexcusable because I view that as Alabama should never lose to Vanderbilt. Like, as much as we can talk about what is Diego Pavia, what he's meant, how he's been able to take over Nashville, you're still Alabama. That's still Vanderbilt. But the Florida State game was even more disappointing because in the Florida State game, that was a matchup where I think a lot of people just watched Alabama quit. Alabama, the thing is like they made the college football playoff, but they have incredibly bad losses. Like the Vanderbilt game, listen, I understand Diego Pavia went to the Heisman Trophy presentation. He changed the culture in Nashville. You're Alabama. You don't lose to Vanderbilt. You just simply don't. It doesn't matter who is playing quarterback for that team. The Florida State loss. The Florida State loss is so damning because of, while, yes, Gus Malzahn is still terrorizing your nightmares, you watched the team finish 5-7 or 4-8, and one of the wins is against you in a year where they struggled mightily. And the worst part is that the identity of Alabama underneath Kalen DeBoer at times, when the going gets tough, you quit. They quit in the Indiana game. They quit in the Florida State game. They quit in the second half against Georgia. And that's unacceptable at a place in Tuscaloosa. So I don't think that he's on the hot seat. I don't think he's going to be fired after 2026. I don't think that he is going to be gone in the next 3 years. But I understand the frustrations that come with it. Because if you did have a coach that demanded excellence, that demanded perfection, that wouldn't let anybody take a moment off of just running a drill in practice. He'd be on your ass whenever it was little things like you cut the wrong way. And it's built different than that. And there's a fine line of Nick Saban, because I think a lot of people also forget what Nick Saban is. You didn't win your last 3 years. Like, you went to the national championship in 2021 and lost to Georgia, and you went in 2020 and you beat Ohio State. And before that, you hadn't been to a national championship in 3 years. So you haven't won a championship in Alabama in 5 years. You're almost pushing 10 years, if not for that 2020 COVID year. So it's like things have changed down in Tuscaloosa under Nick Saban, but the standard hasn't. And the standard isn't always just about winning national titles. It's about executing. I think that's where you're going to have to see Kalen DeBoer kind of pick up some stuff, get things moving a little bit.
Yeah, and real quick, before we get you out of here, just going into next year, that obviously Alabama fans won't be part of this conversation. Texas, we've seen everything they've done here in the portal, adding around Arch. Of course, Georgia always going to be big dog. LSU with Lane. Who do you see going into next year as some of the favorites?
I think in the SEC, the three that you named are certainly there. Georgia's still Georgia. Like, I think Georgia's schedule is a lot more challenging, and especially with what they lost in terms of the draft, there's going to be some replacements that may or may not be immediately found. But they're still Georgia, and as long as Kirby Smart's running the show, I still expect them to be a playoff team. I think Ole Miss getting back to Trinidad Chambliss is a big deal. Listen, I understand that you can talk about, well, it's Pete Golding and we're those Lane's players and Lane's identity, but you had a quarterback that was able to beat Georgia on the road in a neutral site location. He gave you a chance against the runner-up for the national championship, and you were quite literally, to some people's mind, a pass interference play away from maybe even playing in the national championship against Indiana. That means something. And the guy you hired to be your new offensive coordinator, and John David Baker from ECU, is cut from the same cloth as Lane Kiffin. He was a former tight ends coach that got an opportunity to call plays out in the American Conference. So you got to feel good about what he provides. You still have your star running back in Keywan Lacey. Your offensive line is pretty good. Your schedule is a little bit more challenging than it was from a season ago, but 9-3 may end up being good enough for some teams to get in the college football playoff with the new 9-game conference schedule. So I think that they're going to be in the play. I think Tennessee, if they were able to keep Joey Aguilar, would have been a really intriguing team to me because their schedule's manageable. Like, if you look at their schedule, you have the game against Alabama. That's going to be a challenge. You have the game against Georgia. That's going to be a challenge. Outside of that, is there really a game that you're sitting here on pins and needles going, can't win that one, can't win that one, can't win that one? The Texas game is one where maybe you'd have a little bit of pushback, but I love the hire of Jim Knowles. I think that offensively, you know what you're getting in Josh Heupel's unit. That could have been an interesting team. But I think if you were to ask me right now, the 6 that I believe will be fighting for the college football playoff are the 4 that went this past year. And then I think you got to throw in LSU with what Lane's got. And then probably I would, hold up. And then Texas. So Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, LSU, and who am I missing? Texas A&M. Those will probably be the ones I think at the end of the day that we're talking about fighting for a spot in Atlanta.
Yeah, so it's going to be a lot of teams fighting for the spots as always in the SEC. And Cole, appreciate you coming on. I had a little technical snafus in there, but a great conversation talking college football with you. A little hockey at the top and radio podcast, all good stuff. If the listeners want to follow you online, where can I find you?
It's at Mr. Cole Thompson on Twitter. That's where you can mostly find me. Cole_Thompson on Instagram. At SEC Unfiltered on YouTube. At College Football Addiction on YouTube. At Sports Talk 790. You can listen to The Morning Drive with Dan and Cole, where we are the only show in Houston that is willing to talk college football on the regular from 6 to 10 weekdays on Sports Talk 790.
All right, everybody go give Cole a follow. And Cole, again, appreciate the time. I hope we can do this again sometime down the road.
Anytime, Phillip.